The wind screamed across the firing line and someone laughed. She drew the dead rifle. Snow dusted the range like spilled salt, stinging eyes and exposed skin. Sergeant Lena Hart, call sign Ivy, stood alone at her lane, boots sunk half an inch into frozen gravel. The base sat quiet beyond the hills. A few antennas, a single windsock snapping at 12 knots. It was qualification week, and everyone else was already posting groups tight enough to make instructors nod. Her weapon, though, didn't belong here. The rifle looked fine from a distance. Matte black barrel, composite stock, scope mounted with care. But the firing pin housing was cracked, hairline at first glance, deep as betrayal once you saw it. Warrant Officer Briggs, the armorer, had smirked when he handed it over. "You want this one, Hart? Should have been scrapped a month ago." She only said, "I'll make it work." "Sure you will," he'd replied, walking off with a whistle. Now, under the pale morning, Lena chambered around and let the cold bite through her gloves. Her breath fogged the air, vanishing before it rose. Captain Mason Rourke, Falcon, stood behind the line with a clipboard and that slow, deliberate stance of a man who'd seen too many excuses. "Range is hot," he called. "Target 4 is cold, 800 meters. Lena adjusted the bipod, slid her cheek against the stock, and drew the crosshairs onto the steel plate ahead. Mirage shimmered low over the snow, heat ghosts from yesterday's sun still rising. The wind's hum carried across the valley, steady left to right, maybe 12 knots. She compensated half a mil, exhaled, and squeezed. The rifle barked once. The bullet went wide, kicking up dirt past the target's shoulder. Second shot, another miss. Third, nothing even close. Someone behind her snorted. "Told you it's junk." Rourke lowered his clipboard. "Weapons unfit. Next shooter." Lena kept her eye on the scope, still as stone. "Request retest, sir, under my own conditions." Rourke's voice cut the wind. "Sergeant, you've got 3 misses. That's a mechanical failure." "Then I'll fix it," she said quietly. The range fell into a hush that wasn't silence, just the sound of disbelief. Rourke gave a nod like a man humoring a ghost. "Fine. You've got until morning, but if it still scatters, it's done. And so is your qual." When he walked off, the laughter resumed, softer now, with that edge soldiers get when they'd rather not admit they're curious. Lena cleared the chamber and slung the rifle over her shoulder. She didn't look back. By evening, the wind had dropped to a whisper. The armory lights glowed dull yellow against concrete walls. Lena sat cross-legged at a bench, the rifle stripped down in front of her. Springs, pins, the firing mechanism, each piece laid in a line like bones. She turned the cracked housing in her fingers. A flaw, yes, but predictable. Predictable meant fixable. She ran a rag through the barrel, studying the carbon. Too much blowback from imperfect ignition. The pin wasn't striking center mass. She scavenged through a bin of discarded parts, found a firing pin from an older model, and began filing the edge by feel, using the rhythm of her breath to keep pace. Ghost, her spotter, leaned in through the doorway. "You know, Ivy, we've got spare rifles stacked too deep in the cage. You don't have to play mechanic." She didn't look up. "I don't quit on tools that can still work." He grinned, shaking his head. "Suit yourself. Forecast says 12 knots again tomorrow. You like fighting the wind? It keeps me honest." Hours passed unnoticed. Candlelight, emergency backup when the power flickered, shimmered across the metal, bleeding orange over her hands. She reassembled the rifle piece by piece, testing the bolt's lockup, the click of safety engagement. The mechanics still felt wrong, but they were consistent. Consistency, she knew, was the first step toward accuracy. Outside, the range sat dark. Only the target plates gleamed faint under moonlight. Lena walked the line once more, alone, the cold air so sharp it hurt to breathe. She imagined the next day's first shot, how it would sound, how it would feel through her shoulder, how it would cut through every word spoken behind her back. In her bunk that night, she studied ballistic charts under dim red light. Wind drift at 12 knots meant nearly 3/4 mil correction at 800 meters. Temperature 32 degrees, lower air density. The round would drop slightly slower. She memorized the adjustments by heart, whispering them like a prayer. By dawn, Frost coded the rifles and range tables. The others joked over instant coffee, their laughter puffing clouds in the cold. Lena walked past them carrying her weapon, the patched crack still visible like a scar. Rourke met her at the line. "You ready to prove a point, Sergeant?" "I'm ready to shoot, sir." He gave the signal. "Range hot." The world narrowed to a tunnel, her scope, her breath, her heartbeat. She set the sights just off-center, knowing the wind's trick, the rifle's temperament. A pause, an inhale, a soft pull. The first round hit metal, not center but on plate. The second landed closer. The third, she didn't even watch the impact. She knew by the feel of recoil, smooth and obedient, that it was right. Behind her, Rourke raised an eyebrow. "Looks like it still fires." "It always did," she said. He didn't answer, but his silence wasn't dismissal anymore. Later, after the others cleared out, Lena sat again at her lane. The wind was settling, the air still cold. She ran her hand along the rifle's length, tracing the repaired line where the crack lived. A fault, but hers now. A promise made to steel and silence. Tomorrow they'd test again. Longer range, heavier wind, tougher scrutiny. She wasn't afraid of it. If anything, she felt the opposite. A pull forward, a need to see how far precision could stretch before it broke again. The horizon was already paling to gray when she whispered to herself, "Wind and iron. That's all it is." And tomorrow the wind would meet her halfway. Dawn broke like a bruise across the horizon, and the wind was already waiting for her. Frost still clung to the canvas walls of the range tent when Lena Hart opened her eyes. She had barely slept. The cracked rifle lay across her knees, freshly cleaned and reassembled, a faint scent of oil lingering on her gloves. Outside, the air carried the bitter edge of cold metal and cordite, a smell she had come to trust more than people. By the time she stepped onto the firing line, the light was thin and gold, stretching over the valley. The wind, 12 knots yesterday, now howled stronger. Ghost was already setting up beside her, his spotting scope glinting in the weak sunrise. "Morning, Ivy," he said, rubbing his hands. "Feels like the wind's trying to qualify, too." She half smiled. "Then it can take my slot." He chuckled, adjusting the tripod. "Range distance 1,000. Mirage is heavy already. We'll need left 5 mils, maybe 0.3 more if the gusts stay this bad." Lena nodded, absorbing every word. The range was empty except for them and a figure standing 50 meters behind. Lieutenant Sarah Cho, call sign Torch. She was new to the base, brought in to oversee final evaluations. Her expression gave nothing away. Arms folded, eyes cold. Watching everything. Lena set the rifle down, sighted through the scope. "Target 4 is cold," Ghost announced. "Range hot," she replied, breathing slow. The words steadied her pulse. The crosshairs trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from the gusts rolling down the valley. The air shimmered with mirage, blurring the edges of the steel plate. She waited for the lull, counted the rhythm in her head. 3 seconds between each steadying gust. She exhaled and squeezed. The shot rang out sharp. A puff of dust bloomed a meter right of target. "Impact low by 2, Ghost said, adjusting the scope. "Hold. Send it again." Second shot, closer. Third, closer still. The group tightened, inching toward the center. Ghost gave a small whistle. "You're walking it in, Ivy. Just 1 click off." Lena made the correction, ignoring the ache creeping into her shoulder. She could feel the rifle's imperfection, the slight delay in firing pinstrike, the uneven bolt tension. But she was learning its language. Every weapon had one, a rhythm hidden beneath its flaws. Left 5, Ghost called. Push .3 mils. She obeyed. Breath in, slow release, trigger, press. The bullet found steel this time. A sharp, clean hit. Ghost grinned. There it is, dead plate. From behind, Cho's voice cut through the wind. Luck. Lena froze. Cho walked forward, boots crunching over gravel, her tone level but sharp. You're compensating by instinct. That rifle's not zeroed, Sergeant. You can't trust luck at 1,000 meters. I'm not, Lena said. Cho stared down at her, eyes dark and unreadable. Prove it. Full sequence, wind at max. You shoot when I say. No corrections from your spotter. Ghost opened his mouth to argue, but Lena gave a single nod. Understood. Cho folded her arms again, stepping back. The gusts had grown worse, erratic, howling in sudden bursts. Dirt lifted off the ground and swirled around her prone position. She lay back down, heart steady, breath short. The world shrank to the scope, the reticle and the weight of the rifle in her hands. Cho's voice came sharp. Hold. Send it. She fired. The shot drifted wide, carried by an unexpected gust. Again. She adjusted one notch, felt the wind flatten, fired. The bullet struck just off target, kissing the edge. Hold. Send it. The rifle barked. Steel sang in response. A solid hit dead center mass. Ghost muttered under his breath, "That's not luck." Cho's face didn't change. Wind's dropping. Let's see if you can read it when it rises again. They repeated the sequence, 6 more rounds. Each hit drew closer, the rhythm of firing and wind correction falling into place. Lena's breathing matched the world around her. Inhale on the gust. Exhale when it faded. The barrel shimmered with heat mirage, ghosting the image through her scope. She knew the shot that mattered was coming, one that would define whether she belonged here. Cho gave the call again. Hold. Send it. Lena fired, timing perfect. But at that instant, a freak gust swept crosswise down the valley. The bullet veered, striking inches from center. Ghost lowered his scope, grimacing. Wind spike. Nothing you could have done. Cho looked at the target through her binoculars, then at Lena. Close, but not control. The words stung more than Lena expected. She felt the warmth of frustration rise under her collar, but she said nothing. She simply cleared the chamber and began logging the shot data in her notebook. Wind speed, temperature, correction mills. Every failure was a note to be studied, not mourned. Cho's tone softened slightly. You've got discipline, Sergeant. I'll give you that. She paused. You want another go? Lena looked up. Tomorrow. I need to see what the wind has to say first. Cho regarded her a long moment before nodding. Then, tomorrow, you'll get your proof. Live fire, open conditions. 1 kilometer 200. The challenge hung between them, heavy and sharp as steel. When Cho walked away, Ghost leaned closer, whispering, That's a setup, Ivy. She's testing you in front of everyone. I know, Lena said quietly, eyes still fixed on the distant target. That's why I'll win. She stood, slinging the rifle over her shoulder. The wind tore at her jacket, but she didn't flinch. The imperfections of the weapon were hers now. Not a burden, but a language she had finally begun to understand. Tomorrow would decide if that understanding was enough. And by then, the wind would no longer be her enemy. The range fell silent. Only the sound of her breath and the wind counted down the truth. The air was a restless beast that morning, clawing across the open plain, rattling flags and kicking dust into spirals. Frost clung to the edges of the firing platform, glinting in the pale sun. Lena lay prone, cheek pressed against the cracked stock of her rifle. The same rifle they'd said was useless. The same rifle that had almost broken her before she learned how to listen to it. At 1,200 meters, the steel target shimmered in the mirage. It wasn't just distance. It was distortion, heat, and faith. Every heartbeat, every breath, every fraction of movement would mean inches at that range. Captain Rourke stood behind the line, arms crossed, jaw tight. The rest of the platoon formed a half-circle around her position, their eyes waiting to see if she would fail or become something they'd have to reckon with. Beside her, Ghost adjusted his spotting scope. "Wind's pushing 18 to 22, he muttered. "She's dancing all over." "I know," Lena said softly. Her tone was steady, her pulse not. Rourke's voice cut through the wind. "One round, one chance. Make it count." She nodded once. The bolt slid forward with a metallic sigh. The chamber sealed. For a long breath, she didn't move. Her body was still, but her mind mapped every factor she'd learned to calculate by instinct. Humidity, temperature, angle of light, the curl of mirage above the sand berm. The wind wasn't steady. It pulsed in waves, shifting every few seconds like the breath of a restless ocean. Ghost 7. Spotter. "Ready." Lena whispered, "Shooter ready." Her gloved finger brushed the trigger guard. Her breath formed a thin fog in the cold. Ghost 7. Left 9. Push .4. Mills, hold. Send it. The reticle wavered, the crosshairs dancing against the blur of a distance. She exhaled halfway, then froze. The wind shifted again. She waited, muscles burning with the effort to stay perfectly still. Then, nothing. Silence on the radio. "Ghost?" she said. No reply. The scope beside her stayed pointed, but the small green light on its digital relay had gone dark. Signal cut. "Ghost, do you copy?" Nothing. She blinked once, then lowered her cheek again to the rifle. All she had left was instinct. The world narrowed to a tunnel of glass and breath. The target flickered through the mirage, a phantom shape in the shimmer. She remembered the sound of laughter on the first day, the word broken echoing through the wind. The humiliation that had once hollowed her now filled her veins with purpose. She adjusted half a mil right, trusted the pattern of the gusts she'd learned over hours of watching the dust move across the field. Her pulse counted time. 1, 2, 3. The trigger broke like ice cracking. The rifle recoiled into her shoulder, a familiar kick that felt almost gentle now. At 1,200 meters, a faint flash rippled through the haze. The sound arrived 3 heartbeats later, a deep, clean note that rolled across the plain and faded into stillness. Ghost's voice returned, grainy and low. "Signal drop. Wait. Wait. Impact confirmed. Dead center." He hesitated, disbelief filling the static. "Correction. Perfect split." For a moment, no one spoke. Even the wind seemed to draw breath. Through her scope, Lena saw it. The bullseye cleaved into 2 perfect halves, the paint peeled by the force of precision. The shot had landed directly through the center line of the previous mark, as though she'd split the past itself. Rourke stepped forward. His boots crunched on the gravel. 1,200 meters, he said quietly. No wind flags, no spotter. He looked down at her. "You just rewrote the manual." The other shooters began to murmur. One of them gave a low whistle. Another simply shook his head. Ghost walked up slowly, lowering his headset. "Guess the rifle wasn't broken after all," he said. Lena didn't look up. She ejected the casing, rolled it between her fingers, and tucked it into her vest pocket. "It never was," she said. Joe approached from the back, his usually sharp voice softer now. "That wasn't luck," he said. "That was control." She nodded once, accepting neither praise nor denial. "Just correction," she said. "Everything can be corrected." Rourke turned toward the range tech. "Market certified," he said. "Effective immediately." The tech scribbled on his clipboard, eyes wide. The rest of the unit stood quiet, unsure whether to clap or stay silent. Then, slowly, someone began to applaud. It spread like a tide, hesitant, then sure, until the sound echoed against the hills. Lena rose, brushed the frost from her knees, and slung the rifle over her shoulder. The cracked bolt caught the light one last time. She didn't smile, but the corner of her mouth curved slightly, as if acknowledging the weight of the moment without letting it claim her. Cho raised a hand in a small, respectful salute. Ghost gave a single nod. Rourke looked at her with something between pride and disbelief. She didn't stay for congratulations. She walked past them, boots crunching softly in the gravel, her breath steady against the cold. The wind had quieted now, almost reverent. Behind her, the target still hung split in perfect symmetry, a reminder of the line she had crossed and the one she had drawn for everyone watching. The range fell silent again as she disappeared into the horizon, the rifle across her back no longer broken, but proven. And in that silence, the legend of the shot that split the target was just beginning to take shape.